things for the Fairy Queen and our visit there, then we need to take her some gifts. I'm going to make some pumpkin pasties in this episode. So let's get our aprons on and start cooking. Or should I say, baking. Okay. The recipes I've used for the pumpkin pasties are in the description below. We're going to make the pie crust first, and then I'm going to make two different fillings. We are going to make a sweet and a savory filling. You're going to need a few things. You're going to want a good cutting board. We're going to make the pie crust first so it can chill. Because a buttery pie crust, or a flaky pie crust, when you're doing pies, you want that pie dough cold when you go to cut the little circles to make the pasties. While I am using gluten-free flour, this recipe will actually work both ways, which is really nice. Well, let's get started. Alright, so I've got my recipe here. It says 2.5 cups of cup gluten-free flour, or 2.5 cups of regular flour. So we want 2.5. One. And make sure you level those off. 2.5. Flour off to the side there. Okay, now I need 1/2 teaspoon of fine sea salt. Well, I'm not using sea salt, I'm just using plain salt. Just plain table salt. The reason I cup it like this is so that I don't make a mess. Okay. Tap it gently to flatten it out. There we go. Put the rest of that back in there. Alright. I'll leave that out later. Okay. Now, since we are just doing a plain crust, we don't need to add the sugar. And we'll give that a stir. Mix everything in. Just like that. It's a nice flour. This is the first time I've used this flour. Oh no! Always be careful. Let's see. I don't think that's going to hurt us too much. Now, we want cold butter. And it says 2 sticks. So, cold butter, 2 sticks. We'll need to cut that into 1/2-inch pieces. Make sure it's unsalted butter. In almost all baking, unsalted butter because you don't need the extra butter or extra salt. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take and we're going to cut it just like that. You know, I can almost just stick the whole thing in there. Well, there we have it. And then we do the same to the other one. Now, what I'm using is what's called a pastry cutter. And we're just going to cut the butter into the flour until it's all kind of nice and crumbly. You're going to need that knife again and again. Now you could use the knife to do this, especially with older kids and harder butter, or you could use a food processor if you want to do that. I tend to do things a little bit more old-fashioned than that. You can also get in there and use your hands. And what we're looking for is pretty much pea-sized chunks of the butter and flour mixture. That lets me know it's time for the next step. Love that butter. Now what I'm using is Kerrygold butter, as opposed to like Land O'Lakes or store brand butters. It's a I believe it's a higher fat content, which makes for a flakier crust. See how it's starting to come together, just like that? That's kind of what we're looking for. We still have some big chunks of butter. But you notice how it's not sticking to the pastry cutter. Alright. So, now that we've gotten down that far, let's pull all that off. Alright. Put that to the side. Now we need some apple cider vinegar, and that's 1 teaspoon. Do not mix teaspoons with tablespoons, otherwise things are going to go quite awry. Very, very carefully measure that out. Right, and drizzle it over the top. This will help to create a flaky crust. Alright, so mix that in. Now we want to add some cold water, and you'll put it in by tablespoonfuls. You're going to need about 1/3 to 1/2 cup, depending on how dry or wet your temperature, the air is. See how it's starting to come together? It's not as floury. Humidity in the air determines a lot of how your baking turns out and how much you might need of something. See how it's starting to look almost like ice cream. And it says you need a shaggy dough. You might even not need the whole 1/3 cup that I've got there. You don't want it forming a ball, because you'll form that later. You just need it to be sticky enough Alright, I think we're about there. Because it's sticking together. I need just 1 more tablespoon. Alright, I'm going to move these off. And I'm going to put a little bit of flour down. I think we're about ready to okay. Always flour your hands, or if you're working with sweet things, especially stuff that has powdered sugar in it, flour your hands with powdered sugar. But in this case, we're just flouring it with flour. You're flouring our hands with flour. Right. Go. You don't want to work it too much because it can get overworked and won't work properly, or won't roll out properly later on. Alright, so now what we need to do, put that over here, is we're going to cut that in approximately half, because we're going to make both styles. Form that into a ball. Put one off to the side. Form this one into a ball. Okay. We'll take that. Wrap our dough in that. And stick it in the cold larder, the refrigerator, for about 30 minutes to an hour. Just like that. Just like that. Alright, and then we're going to clean up our workspace and make the fillings for our pasties. There we go. All nice and clean. Now we can make the fillings. Since I am making 2 we're making 2 different pie fillings. or pasty fillings. We will need, let's see, for the savory one, all of the recipes that I'm using today, you can find in the description below. Need onion powder and ground sage and garlic. And now this recipe calls for cheddar cheese. I'm going to use a mixture of cheddar and Parmesan. So I'm using a mixture of sharp cheddar and Parmesan. Let's see. We'll need pepper. And we'll need salt. I am going to use my good salt, wherever that is, right there. And I'm going to use my Celtic sea salt. I will grind it up really fine in my mortar and pestle. Let's see. So, black pepper, onion powder, salt, sage, garlic. Oh, pumpkin. Kind of need that. Okay. So in this one, we're going to put the fillings for the savory. So we need 7.5 ounces or half a can. So let's see here. Okay. Just leave that in there. That looks like about half a can. Alrighty, let's see. Now we need half a clove of minced garlic, so that's probably, if you buy your garlic like this, like I do, it's probably about a teaspoon. Okay, and then we need a 1/4 cup of cheddar cheese. So that would mean 1/8 of a cup of each one. So let's find our 1/8 cup. Oh, that's right. We put it in the flour. Alright, so we need about 1/8 of a cup of cheddar cheese. So, like about that much. And then we're going to do the same. Go. Okay. Then 1/8 of a tablespoon of sage. Sage is really, really strong. So you don't want to have too much. That's 1/4. That is way too much. Alright, so we're just going to do it this way. I'm gonna say about 3 pinches. There we go. Sage is really, really strong. Good for you, but really strong. 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Oh, I have ingredients, which is going to have to be transferred out. Usually I do this. I think that's allspice. I may need that. Alright, so 1/4 of a teaspoon salt and a 1/4 of a teaspoon of black pepper. Looks like about 1/4 of a teaspoon. We'll grind it up a little bit finer. And then we'll have a 1/4 of a teaspoon of onion powder. Now, if you're allergic to onions, you can probably omit that. Alright, yeah. I'm just going to grind that up together into a nice fine powder. Just like that. There we go. And then we'll add that. Now the thing about the Celtic sea salt is that it's an incredibly humid salt, so it's sticky. So it sticks to pretty much everything. Alright. Now, put that off to the side because we'll need that to grind up other things later. I'm just going to mix all of those together. Distribute the flavors. Mix it all up in that pumpkin puree. Make sure you're using pumpkin puree and not pumpkin pie filling, otherwise you're going to get a really interesting flavor. And it may not necessarily be good. Now, in medieval times, they didn't have pumpkins. They had turnips and other squashy type things. Because pumpkin is a squash. It's in the squash family. So people didn't carve pumpkins. They carved turnips or carved some sort of big squash for jack-o'-lanterns. All right, now we are going to put the other half in here. So now we're on to the sweet filling. All right. Right. Okay, we'll need that in there. And part of preparing foods like this is so that people could have food last longer. Okay, we need nutmeg. Oh, I forgot the butter in this. We need 1 tablespoon of butter. My bad. Need that for something else later. Alright, so most butter packages come with markings just like that. So each marking like this is a tablespoon. So I'm going to open that up. Make it soft and buttery. So your tablespoon is right about there. So 1 for you and 1 for you. Alright, we'll put that aside because we'll be needing it later. Let's go ahead and mix that in. It's soft enough. You want that to be a nice buttery filling. There we go. Okay, that's that one mixed in. We'll do the same with this one. And now we're going to put sweet fillings in this. Okay. So we need a teaspoon of cinnamon. Cinnamon. Oops. Need a half teaspoon of pumpkin pie. Pumpkin pie spice. Now, pumpkin pie spice. That is a teaspoon. Pumpkin pie spice is a blend of several different spices. It has cinnamon, nutmeg, allspice, ginger, and cloves. And then we need 1/4 teaspoon of allspice. Normally, I grind these myself. It's a lot of allspice. But that's okay. All right, and then 2 tablespoons of sugar. 2 tablespoons of sugar. That just had water on it. We're going to go ahead and dry that off. That's what aprons are for. Alrighty. Now, mix all that together. And never be afraid to taste. Yum yum. Ooh, I want to taste this one. Just 'cause. Ooh, that's quite yummy. Yum yum. Those are going to be yummy. Every good cook, every good baker tastes to make sure that the blend of spices in their dough, in their soup, whatever, sauce, they make sure that the blend of spices is just right. Okay, now are we ready to roll out our dough? Now we are going to preheat our oven to 400. And that'll take a little bit, but that gives us time to clean up our mess before starting to roll things out. This time we're going to wipe down and dry it so that we don't end up with a sticky mess. Alright. All nice and dry. Okay. I'm pretty sure I'm only going to need 1 egg for what I'm doing, but so what we're going to do, this is for the egg wash. It makes your pastry, gives it a nice shine. And what you're going to do, you're just going to beat it up just like that. You could use a whisk. I generally don't. That works. Okay, these have chilled for about a half hour now. And you want to turn it out on a lightly floured surface. Using the glass top of my stove, so it should be just fine without it, but I'm going to take that out. We're going to do that, and I need my rolling pin. basically making pie crust. You want to get it as thin as you possibly can. Here for a minute to give me a little bit more room. Put that down off to the side. Give it enough pressure that it flattens it out. Alright, now I have this lovely little contraption that I found at my local craft store in their baking section. It's going to allow me to cut the circles so that the size needed to make my pastry. So we're going to do that. That right on the top there. There's our oven. Right. And you see that little well there that it's creating? You'll want to spoon some of your mixture in there. Just like that. And then we'll need a little bit of water. bit of water around the edge. See what I'm doing? What that's going to do is allow us to close our little hand pie. Ooh, that may be too much filling. Yep, that is too much filling. That's okay. Okay, and then we take that and press our little pie closed. See? Oops! Well, live and learn. Well, that was a bit of a bust, quite literally. Okay, now, how do we do this? Sadly, that one's going to have to go in the trash. Well, fiddle. That's okay, though. We all make mistakes. Let's try this again. I probably filled it too full. Okay. Let's see. Maybe we're dusting our that from sticking. Okay, so put that on there. Okay, and then we don't fill it quite so full. Just want a little taste. Let's try that. Oops, we forgot. Got something important. Alright, let's try this again. Oh no, it's going to break. Well, it came off easier. So maybe that's not all it's cracked up to be. But that's okay. We can totally do this by hand. We can use that as the template. It works. Okay, how about this? We use it to give us an idea of how much we want to put in the center. Sounds good? Sounds good. There we go. Us flip it. That works. And then we pinch it closed just like that and put it on our baking sheet. It's not perfect. So now what we're going to do, those over perfect, but this is the first time I've done them. And that's okay. Alright, so I'm just going to brush those just like that. Pop them in the oven for about 15 minutes. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do our sweet filling. So it was basically the same concept. We'll need the other half of the dough, and we're going to put that with that. Work it a little bit with your hands. Before you go flatten it out. Just like that. Go. I think we did it. Look at that lovely little hand pie. Hey, we did it this time. You and me together. That's awesome. It's not perfect yet, but we are on our way there. Excellent. But I think I squished it a little too tight. Oh well. It's been a mess. Okay, now we get to clean up our mess. Never leave a mess when you're baking. So while we wait for that, and yes, I have plenty here to make a couple more, I'm not going to make them right now. I will probably stick this dough back in the refrigerator and make some more later. But I think we have enough for the Fairy Queen with what we've done today. Well, that's the sweet ones out. They look really yummy. We had a few problems, but overall they don't look too bad. There's the savory ones there. And really, I don't see much difference. It's a little shinier on the savory ones, but that way we can tell them apart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer a couple of these to our little plate so we can take them to the Fairy Queen. There we go. Just like that. So, we made some sweet and savory pumpkin pasties for the Fairy Queen when we go and visit. I hope you enjoyed this cooking episode. The links to the recipes are in the description below. Moms and dads and kids of all ages, please cook together, bake together, especially this time of year. It's important to start those kinds of traditions. I bake with my children all the time, and it's one way of them learning how to cook and passing on family traditions. We'll see you in the next episode.